Welcome to Ask GMBN Tech, our weekly Q&A show. If you want to know anything about mountain bike tech, get your questions into the email address on the screen right there, or you can add them in the comments below this very video. Just make sure you use the hashtag Ask GMBN Tech so we can find your questions. First up this week is from Eugenio KDF. Hi guys, I've got to do a fork lower leg service on my 2018 RockShox Pike, and I can't find the RockShox 0W30 oil where I live. What other oil can I use? Well, as far as I know, that particular oil, it's actually a motorcycle based oil. As far as I know, it's an engine oil. So the 0W30, the W doesn't actually stand for weight, which most oils are referred to as an oil weight. Actually refers to the oil viscosity in different temperatures basically. So the 0 means it's really good and it will still flow in super cold conditions. And a 30 means it will still flow like a 30 in really hot conditions. I think that's like 100 degrees centigrade. So you can actually use other engine oils, but they have to be fully synthetic. And the reason for that is engine oils can wreak havoc, really. I think that's fair to say, with bushes and O-rings and other delicate parts inside the fork. So if you're not happy doing that or trying to source one yourself, there are loads of different mountain bike specific fork oils available. Now remember, for the fork lower legs, all it's doing is lubricating the fork. It's not inside the damper. If you're doing anything inside the damping unit, you're going to need a specific oil weight for that. And they're usually 2.5 or 5, depending on if you've got the motion control or if you've got a charger damper. I think it's 5 weight for the motion control and 2.5 for the charger damper unit. But as it's just a lower leg lube, you've got lots of options on the market too. So I'm just going to chuck through a few of them up on the screen now so you can see. So first up, TF Tuned Shocks. That's a local suspension tuner to us, but they ship globally. They have their own specific formula they've had made up for them. It's nice and cheap. They ship that pretty much anywhere. It does the job perfectly, so that's a good one. There's also Whistler Performance Lubes. Now, we featured them on the tech show a few weeks ago. Now, they're fully environmentally friendly, biodegradable oils. They're safe on your skin, all that sort of stuff. They do an oil that's perfect for a lower leg as well. It's called Shock Boost. That one is available globally as far as I know as well. It's distributed in the UK by TF Tuned, and you can get it direct from Whistler Performance Lubes from their website. Now Fox, also as in Fox Suspension, they do their 20-way oil bath oil. Now that is also perfect for lower leg lubrication. Just because Fox doesn't mean you can't use it in a RockShox fork. It's just oil at the end of the day. So that one will do the job. And there's also Juice Lubes. They do their one, and there's a whole bunch of others like Weld Tight, and I'm sure there's numerous other options available on the market. In fact, Stendek, that's another one that comes to mind. There's lots out there, but again, at the end of the day, it's just lubricating oil for your fork. And if you're happy doing fork lower leg service, you're going to be doing that fairly frequently because it's a nice thing to do and it makes your forks feel really good. So it's worth getting yourself a decent amount of the stuff and just getting on with it. Next question is from SN Polly. How do I check my rear shock bushing? How do I know when it's worn and when to replace it? And have you got any tips for maintaining the bushing? Well, simply put, if there's any sort of movement in it, you're going to need to replace it. Now, you want to replace it as soon as possible because although a bush is designed to wear, the more worn it gets, the more movement there will be, and the movement can actually damage the shock eyelet itself. And the whole point of having a bush is it enables it to move within the shock eyelet. If that eyelet's damaged, you're not going to be able to fit a bush in it, and it's not going to work properly, and it's going to be a very costly repair. Bushes themselves don't cost a lot of money, so as soon as you have movement there, get some new ones ordered. In fact, order yourselves 2 sets while you're at it, so you've got backups in your little home supply. As far as maintenance goes, there's not really much maintenance you need to do with shock bushes because they just do their thing. There's no sort of moving parts as such. The bush itself actually wears over time, and that's it doing its job, really. When it's worn out, it's time for a new one. It's not a part like a bearing that you can grease and overhaul and make last longer. A bush will wear out and you do need to replace it. Next up from Edgar Solia I Sol. Hi guys, what would be the perfect travel bike for being as efficient as possible climbing and going downhill? How long's a piece of string, dude? Like, there's no perfect bike. It's completely down to a whole number of things. It's not completely down to anything, in fact. It depends how fit you are as a rider. If you're an extremely fit rider, you might be able to power uphill on a 180 or 200 mil travel bike. And that way, you're going to rip it on those descents. However, you might be a much better descender and actually not that fit. So you might want to run less travel to climb up with, and then you're fine in managing that on the downhills. There's also wheel size to contend with. A bike with bigger wheels and less travel will be as capable in some situations as a bike with more travel and smaller wheels. There is really no sort of optimum. It does depend. There's so many different variables in there. But if you're asking me on what I would pick, I would probably pick something with 29-inch wheels and between 130 and 150mm travel. That would probably be my sweet spot. I'm happy to churn the bigger, heavier wheels uphill. I'm a bit more like a diesel engine rather than like a race car running on performance fuel. You know, I'm never going to be super fast up hills. I'm pretty big, I'm quite heavy, I'm quite tall, but I'll keep on trucking. So I'm happy to winch to the top on a bike like that and then make the most of the bigger wheels and nice long travel for getting back down again. But it is really up to you, mate. I don't think there's an ideal for anyone. In fact, it's actually quite a good question to throw out to everyone. What would be your ideal wheel size and ideal amount of travel to get the best of all worlds? You know, uphill, downhill, jumping, everything. Love to know what everyone else is riding and what they think is best. Let us know in those comments underneath the video. Another sort of big bike related question from Gavin Sorensen. How much travel is too much travel? Are there any bikes that handle climbing really well whilst being fun on a downhill? Well, as for how much travel is too much travel, 12 inches is too much travel. That's what Josh Bender used when he used to jump off cliffs on his insane carpwheel bike. I think the bottom bracket was about as high as Neil's shoulders. Like, this thing was ridiculous. It had a 12-inch travel fork on it, custom made for him. And then it had, I think on one of his bikes, had 2 rear shocks on it, basically because it was going through so much force and had so much rear wheel travel. Awful thing that was, absolutely disgusting. Made me want to be sick in my mouth. But I should mock it to a degree because actually we got him to thank really because it was him that kickstarted the Red Bull Rampage, which is an amazing event. And really, if he wasn't there doing that pioneering stuff that he brought in from the skiing world, we wouldn't be where we are. So actually, all hail Josh. I think it's amazing what he's done, even though the bike he did it on was pretty ridiculous if you ask me. As for your other question, are there any bikes that handle climbing really well whilst being fun on a downhill? Although I've not ridden it, Neil's been riding that new Scott, hasn't he? The Ransom. So it's like a supersized version of the Genius that I've got. I reckon that's going to be pretty good. So that's like a 180 bike, but it's also got the twin lock system on it. So it's basically got a twin piston shock on it. So it activates the second piston. So it feels like it's got a lot less travel when you're climbing than it actually has. That's got to be up there with the contenders. Any bike really though that has sort of lockout on the shock or a climb switch, you can climb on a 180mm bike quite happily. There's enough of them out there on the market. However, we do see a lot of people riding big travel bikes that just don't need to be on them. And the reason for riding the big travel bikes is, it goes uphill all right. Well, yeah, it does go uphill all right. And it descends all right. But I think you'll find a lot of the people riding those bikes will probably be a lot faster uphill and downhill on less travel. So I think they're fighting that travel too much. But each to their own. Enjoy your bike. That's all it's really about. Nice punchy one now from Quan Tian. Hi there, what are the pros and cons of larger disc rotors and smaller disc rotors? And also, I want to get a fast rolling tyre for my rear wheel, and I was thinking of getting a High Roller 2 or a Minion SS. Have you got any other recommendation? Thanks a lot. Well, first up, the larger and smaller disc rotors. So smaller disc rotors, obviously lighter, they're more manageable in that sort of size. Probably more compatible on a lot more bikes than the larger ones because of the physicality of the size. But as a downside, you're not going to have quite as much braking power, and they're going to not do so well when they get heated up when you're overusing those brakes. A bigger disc rotor, simply put, it's just more leverage, it's more power available to you. A bigger disc to dissipate that heat, so they're just better when you need more power. But the obvious thing, but a question a lot of people ask is like, why would all bikes not have bigger discs and make the most of that bigger power? And the answer really is not all bikes need massive disc rotors. For example, a super lightweight cross-country bike, let's just say an XC World Cup bike like this one that belongs to Nino Schurter on screen there. If he had 200mm disc rotors on that bike with his tiny little low-profile tyres on there, he'd be locking his wheels up accidentally the whole time just by jamming on the brakes too easily. So he'll have smaller disc rotors, so he's got better modulation on his brakes, everything feels a bit better for the purpose of what he's doing. But if you put those small disc rotors for Nino's bike on, I don't know, Greg Minar's downhill bike, Greg's going to struggle to slow down anywhere. I know he's not the sort of guy who looks like he touches his brakes, but he'll be fine-tuning braking the whole time, you know, even if it's just marginal amounts of braking, and those discs will get super hot. So the bigger rotors are really important to have consistent, powerful braking. So that's your answer for that one. And as for the fast rolling tyre for the rear wheel, yeah, the Minion SS, that's a fantastic tyre. That's what we put on the bike build bike. Rolls fast, it's got nice side knobs on there for cutting in and give you good traction on the turns. High Roller 2, it's a fantastic tyre, but not a fast rolling tyre as such for a rear. It's certainly fast rolling for a massive grip traction tyre, but you couldn't compare it to the Minion SS. For another tyre like that, have a look at the Schwalbe Rock Razor, very similar tyre. I believe it's slightly more rounded than the Maxxis one, but again, it does depend on the size rim that you put it on, because that just changes the profile of the tyre a bit. And WTB have one as well called the Riddler. That's a really good tyre as well, available in a couple of different rubbers and different casing options, but they're all three fairly similar tyres, aggressive shoulders and sort of a file tread pattern on the top, designed to go fast and give you grip when you need it. Next up's from Mark Elliott. Why do my cranks keep coming loose? It's gotten to the point now that I need to tighten a bolt quite a bit every time before I ride. I'm tempted to use blue Loctite, but I suspect there might be a different problem than the bolt just coming loose. Mark, I think it might be tapered bottom bracket problems you have here. If you've got a tapered bottom bracket on your bike, basically it's a metal axle, it's a square axle, and it tapers, as you would think, towards the end. And then the crank itself is made of a softer aluminium, and that's tapered the opposite direction, so they fit onto each other like that. Now, as soon as that crank has the tiniest, we're talking like a hair amount of movement in it, and you ride it, the leverage you have at the bottom of the crank can just whittle it slightly loose, and it will deform that crank. And from that point on, it will never, ever be quite right. To start with, it will probably creak a bit, even though you think the bolt's nice and tight, but that movement will just unwind that bolt and loosen it. Now, if you just jam in with a load of Loctite, you're still going to get the movement on the crank, and the bolt will still come undone. So it does sound like, if that's the option, so it does sound like if that's a problem to you, you might need a new crank. If you're unsure about this, really, you need to take that to your nearest bike shop and just get them to have a look at it, and they'll tell you on the spot. You'll be able to see it compared to another crank if it's damaged at all. Hopefully that's not your problem. If it's not your problem, I'm not sure what else it could be, because they're generally the only types of cranks that do come loose with the symptoms you're describing. Good luck, dude. Next up from Kale and Malalin. What is the RockShox equivalent of a Fox 32 with a good price and good performance? As simple, RockShox Revelation is the fork you want. It's a slightly smaller chassis than the Pike. Of course, the Pike with 35 is more equivalent to the Fox 34 and the Fox 36. It's a similar sort of fork there. The Revelation is available in various different options: solo air, dual position, which means you can switch a dial and it will lower 30mm. It's a really nice fork actually. I've actually got a set on the front of my Scout that I used in installing a new fork for a video. Really nice action on it. It's available with various different dampers in there. There's lots of different specs, but it's the same chassis on there. So it's actually a really good platform to invest in, just like with other RockShox products, because you can change the internals. If you want to start with a cheaper fork, you can get a better damper later on, and you can do stuff like that. Nice fork. As I said, lots of options available in 26-inch, 27.5 and 29-inch models. Go and have a look at them. Derek Smith. Doddy, I was just talking about cables being replaced with Bluetooth tech from the helmet. I was told probably not, but it's plausible. The future must be without cables, right? Yeah, 100%. All right, so Shimano have got their Di2 electronic shifting, which is, by all accounts, phenomenal. It works really, really well. But I can't help but feel, compared to what's coming in the future, it's a bit like those old TVs when you first got a remote control. The remote control is actually on a cable. And you're like, well, this is cool, but it's still attached, you know, still issues with that. So SRAM have got that new stuff coming out that we've seen on Nino Schurter's bike all year that he's been winning World Cups on. We don't know the full name for it yet. It's had black box stickers all over it, which is their development program. And they've got a wireless, I don't think it's Bluetooth, it's their own wireless system that they also use on the SRAM Red Road transmission. Completely wireless setup. What I can tell you is the shifter on it is phenomenal. So we will have to have a play with these, but not with the batteries in. But the shifter itself is incredible. Here's a shot of it on screen. In fact, this one's on one of Nino Schurter's bikes. And the rear derailleur, you can see where the battery plugs into the back there. There's also a seat post on the way, and it takes the same battery. So if, for example, one of the batteries failed out on the trail, you could swap it with a seat post, assuming you would have both. I think if you had wireless anything, you would go wireless everything, surely, to maximise on that. Something that we have heard, though, is it does make your bike incredibly silent. And that's funny, it's something you don't really take into account, how much noise all your cables make. But next time you go for a ride, pay attention to it, and you'll find your cables, even if you cable tie them together and that, they make noise constantly. As soon as you take them off a bike, you're like, whoa, this is going to be cool. I guess it's the difference when clutch mechs first came in compared to a non-clutch mech. Chain slap just went away overnight and bikes suddenly quietened down. So I think that's going to be another cool thing coming. But we have heard that the shifting from this SRAM system is incredibly fast, and not just an electronic and wireless version of normal shifting. We hear it's much, much better as well. So we're really looking forward to seeing that. We don't know when it's going to launch though. For some reason I think it's going to launch early next year, but we'll have to wait and see. But very cool tech, and yeah, wireless will definitely be the future to some degree. I think it's obviously going to be very expensive when it launches, but that will certainly filter down over the years. Next up from Nick Watkins. I know you, Nick. You've commented on loads of stuff, in fact, so thanks for following us for so long. Hi Doddy, great show. I'm a regular viewer. I've just noticed my RockShox Lyric fork, which has 160mm of travel, only rebounds up to 140-150mm travel. It's got the 80 psi. The only way to get the full 160 is if I actually hold the fork and pull it up. Would it be it needs a full service, as I've never serviced my fork? Cheers, mate. Basically, it sounds to me like the negative air chamber is not filling properly. Basically, it's got a little port on the inside. When you inflate the air into the top of the fork to set it for your body weight, basically there's a little equaliser. It looks like a little, how do you describe it? Like a dimple, I guess, on the rod. And the air will bleed into the negative chamber, and it will enable it to push up basically and give you that full travel. And that's also what makes RockShox forks so pattery smooth, because that negative air spring is quite big in those. Now, what can often happen is a bit of blob of grease or anything like that can block that port. So there's a few options you can do here. If that's the case, try holding it apart, like you suggest you had, called hyperextending it. I've seen quite a lot of people do it. Hold it when the fork's fully pressurised and just hold it for a minute and see if that makes any difference, because sometimes it could be enough just to shift that grease. If not, try deflating your fork, cycling it all the way up and down a few times, and then re-inflating it. Then hopefully that will have been enough to shift it. As far as servicing the fork goes, by all means, do a fork lower leg service. I promise you it's really, really easy to do as long as you've got the tools. I've got a video on that, so I'm going to put a link to that in the description below this. Honestly, it's very simple. Do that, and hopefully that will get you around that problem. There is one other thing it could be though. If you've got a scratch on the air tube or anything else that's going on, there is a chance that air from the positive chamber has worked its way round into the lower leg of the fork. That stuff can happen. If that's the case, you need to sort of equalise that pressure. Now you can do that with the end of a zip tie or cable tie. If you push that past the fork seal and it makes a little noise, you'll know that's what it is, and your fork will come back up again. But I can't imagine it's that. I reckon it's just a blob of grease on that dimple, because that is a fairly common problem. It does happen time to time. So try those workarounds and hopefully you can fix it. Good luck. And finally this week is from Jeremy Sabado. How do I clean clogged valve cores? My Presta valve's actually from an inner tube. I've done a DIY tubeless thing. How do I unclog them if the valve cores are not removable? Yeah, it's definitely a bit tricky. I don't think you're going to get perfect results with this. So recently I had to unclog some of mine which were removable, and even then I removed the valve cores from the bike, put them in some brake cleaner, like I stripped them down again because there's an internal of those valve cores, soaked them in brake cleaner for a while, and then started picking all the stuff off, and it's horrible, like congealed rubber. And look at this picture on screen. This is how much I got out of 2 valve cores. Like, it's pretty disgusting. You can see why they clog up. When you've got non-removable valve cores, I'm not sure you can actually be able to get this rubber out. By all means, you could try some sort of solvent. Just be aware that there are rubber O-rings on the inside there. Brake cleaner is okay. It's not too volatile that it's going to actually damage O-rings, so it's worth a try if you've got some. If not, you probably want to invest in some new tubeless valves that have got removable valve cores, and that way in the future when that does happen you will be able to take them out and clean them. That's it, I'm afraid. There we go, there's another Ask GMBN Tech in the bag. Fire in your questions to that email address on the screen there, and of course in the comments below. We love answering your questions. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. For a couple more really useful videos, click down here for everything about maintaining your riding kit. Something that you guys might not think is that important, but it's just as important as looking after your bike. And click down here if you want to know everything about installing a new fork to your bike. Of course, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you like GMBN Tech.